London shortbread. This recipe is very dear to me because I actually got this recipe when I was on culinary externship in London. And this is probably the best shortbread recipe that I've ever had. It's light, it's fluffy, it crumbles in your mouth, and the main thing is if you have really good quality butter, then it will really elevate this recipe. So if you can purchase some better quality butter, I mentioned before the Kerrygold is really good. If you can do anything that says European style, it's going to have a stronger butter flavor. If you can spring for President brand or even Plugra, and I will detail those in the lecture, then it will elevate this recipe tenfold. Okay? So I wanted to show you here that I have creamed already my butter and powdered sugar. You see here that it's light and fluffy. So I will start adding in my dry ingredients. Now what do I have here? I have 2 ingredients that is going to contribute to the light and fluffy texture. We have cake flour, as you know, tender and light result. And then we have cornstarch. The cornstarch is really the secret ingredient in this recipe to keep it that crumbly texture that we want. So we'll do half of it. And we'll put it on low. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, and of course we will need to scrape. I'm sure you've noticed that this recipe has no eggs. There's no eggs, it has no milk, it has no cream, and technically, because of that, it could be eaten as a cookie dough. But I do recommend that if you eat cookie dough, that you at least cook the flour first, so you can bake it in the oven ahead of time, okay? So I'll turn this up just a smidge. And you'll notice at first that it looks too dry. You just have to keep letting it mix and it will come together. Okay? I'm gonna scrape right now. So I used to have a catering business, and in my catering business I actually made this shortbread. And I liked to jazz up the shortbread. I had a classic variety, which is this flavor, but I wanted to do something a little different. And so I did a matcha variety. I also did a taro flavor as well. I also did like a coffee flavor. You can do chocolate. And so anything that's in kind of in powder form, you can flavor with this shortbread. So just imagine taking some freeze-dried strawberries, for example. You can really powder that up, blitz it up in a blender or a food processor, and incorporate it into your dough. And then you have strawberry shortbread. Delicious. Okay, so now that I've scraped, I want to add in my other half of my dry ingredients, and I will put this on low speed and then let this come together. It's going to look like Play-Doh when it's done. Okay? It's going to look like a very, very kind of soft dough that you can play with. And it's very powdery at this point. That's because of the cornstarch and the powdered sugar. Okay? Now, like I said, don't be tempted to add any liquid to this. Okay? If you're thinking, oh, I think that it's too dry, I'm going to add in some milk. Please don't do that. Okay? It will completely change the texture. It's almost there. As you can see, it's getting more and more into a cohesive dough. And all we're doing is we're just waiting a few seconds. Okay? Now, it's done. Beautiful. Okay? So we're going to roll it out and cut it into little circles. Let me get my sheet pan. Okay, so I have my prepared sheet pan over here, and I want to prepare a little area to roll out my dough. So I do have some bench flour. Hold on a second. Bench flour. Okay, and I'm going to put down. And remember, you throw your bench flour because you're professional. And we'll take our dough and we'll put it out. I'll just use my hand. It's a little bit easier with my hand. Okay. And this dough, like I said, it really feels like Play-Doh right now. You can really cut it to whatever shape that you want. I really like it in circles, and you can even choose how big you want your circles as well. So it's very customizable. I'm just taking the rest of my dough out with my bowl scraper. It's a little bit harder, and so it's easier to use this to scrape it out. Okay. So I take my dough and I kind of push it together so that I have one mass. Okay, see this? But the bottom area now needs a little more bench flour. So I will put that here. And then I'm going to go ahead and roll this out. Okay, so today I'm using a French rolling pin. This is a little bit easier to use. It's just when you roll out, it gives you all of the kind of concentration in the middle. So it's easier on the person rolling, me. Okay. So as I'm rolling, I'm going to rotate my dough and make sure that it's even. Okay. So I want to stop about 1/2 inch. Okay, 1/2 inch. Let's see, 1/2 inch or so. Now, if you want a thicker shortbread, that is completely up to you. I'm just doing mine approximately 1/2 inch. If you want to get your ruler out, go ahead. But I'm not gonna. Okay, that's pretty good. Now I can choose what size round cutter I want. And for these, I really like the smaller pieces. So I like this orange one right here. Okay, this is probably my favorite size for the shortbread. Now when we're cutting these out, as I mentioned when we previously cut out, I think it was scones, when you're cutting something out, okay, the next one that you want to cut out should be very, very close to the first one. Okay, so as you're cutting, you're kind of piggybacking on the last one. And that's because you really don't want to have to roll out this dough again. I mean, well, inevitably you will, but you don't want to have to roll it out 2-3 times because then you'll have more tough dough and more tough dough. So as I roll these out, I'm going to go ahead and put them here. So about 1.5 inches apart because they will spread a little bit. And I will finish cutting them out, and then actually these can go straight in the oven. Okay? They do not need to be chilled. Okay? The reason they don't need to be chilled is that we're not worried about the spreading. Okay, so we're just going to pop them right in the oven. And how do you know when these are done? These are done when they have a little bit of color around the edges. Okay? Usually when I'm baking, as you know, I have you take it to a super dark brown or a golden brown color because of the caramelization and the flavor. But with this recipe, because it's very high in butter, we don't want the butter to be over caramelized, okay? And so we actually want to take it so that it's lighter, okay? So we're gonna take it to a very pale brown color, and then right when we take them out of the oven, we're going to take some granulated sugar and shake it over the top, and that gives it a nice crunch as well. So I'm going to put these in the oven after I cut these out, and then I'll show you what they look like once they're done and we shake them with the sugar. Okay. So our London shortbread is going into the oven. How long do you say? Until it's done. But of course, you want to see, does the edge have a little bit of color? You want to see, does the middle have any raw dough? And I'll show you that when we get to that point. Oven open. Oven open. Our shortbread is ready. Take a look at the color on the outside. You can see a very faint ring of golden brown, okay? Now, these shortbread are not quite finished yet. We have to give them a shower of sugar, okay? This is regular granulated sugar. And what you want to do is just, right when they're hot and you took them out of the oven, you want to sprinkle this on top. And as it cools, it will stick to it. And when you eat it, it'll be a really nice surprise. A nice little crunch, in fact. Okay? Now let's say that you wanted to do the different flavors of shortbread. You could color your sugar, you can flavor your sugar. So there's a lot of options for you. Okay? So I'm just going to finish this.